The Village Drum. In a quiet village nestled between the rolling hills, there was a drum. Not just any drum, but the drum, a sacred instrument used for warnings. It had stood in the center of the village for generations, its deep, thunderous beats echoing through the trees whenever danger was near. For the villagers, it was a sound that heralded both fear and hope. But as time passed, the drum's purpose began to shift. No longer just the harbinger of danger, it slowly transformed into the centerpiece of something far more insidious: gossip. At first it was subtle, a soft tap, barely audible, signaling a small disagreement between two villagers. The drum wasn't used to call the people together for an emergency. It was used for matters of the heart, of misunderstandings, of petty complaints, and soon everyone knew when the drum was struck. They didn't rush to shelter. Instead, they gathered, eager to hear the latest news, the whispers of trouble. Lena, the village healer, was the first to notice. She had been a child when the drum was first used, but now as an elder she could feel the change. The drum's beat had grown softer over the years, less like the pulse of danger and more like the rhythm of a heartbeat gone astray. She knew something was wrong, but no one else seemed to mind. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, the drum sounded louder than ever before, a heavy, urgent thud that vibrated through the earth. The villagers paused, the chatter ceasing in an instant. But this time, it was different. The drum wasn't warning of a wild animal or a storm approaching. No, the drum was beating to the rhythm of gossip. "What's the news?" whispered a man to his neighbor, his eyes wide with anticipation. "I heard it's Lena. She's been meeting with the blacksmith's son," another voice chimed in, just loud enough for others to overhear. Whispers spread like wildfire. The once solemn drum now called to the villagers not for safety, but for scandal. The drumbeat didn't stir a call for action. It stirred curiosity, and with it, suspicion. Lena felt the weight of their eyes. The gossip they spoke of, the lies they'd spread, was not about her at all. But it didn't matter. The truth no longer mattered. The drum had done its work. And the villagers, once bound by unity and care for one another, were now divided by whispers. Days turned into weeks, and each strike of the drum brought with it a new rumor, a new fracture in the fabric of their once tight-knit community. The drum, once an instrument of protection, had become the very tool of destruction. One evening, Lena, feeling the sting of betrayal, walked to the center of the village. The drum stood there, towering over the crowd, its skin stretched tight, waiting to be struck again. She stood before it, the eyes of the villagers heavy upon her. With a single deliberate motion, she lifted her hands not to strike the drum, but to silence it. She touched the drum's surface softly, as if offering a prayer, and for the first time in many moons, the village was quiet. Lena's voice, though soft, carried over the silent crowd. "This drum was meant for warnings, for our safety. It was never meant to be a weapon. You've turned it into something else, a source of division. And in doing so, you've forgotten the very thing that made us strong." She paused, letting her words sink in, the villagers hanging on to every syllable. "We are the ones who have failed, not the drum. It is not the drum's fault that we let it be corrupted." And with that, she stepped back, leaving the drum where it was. The silence lingered in the air, but it wasn't an oppressive silence. It was a reflective one. The villagers stood still, unsure of what to say, or whether they even had anything left to say. It was a long road to redemption. The drum remained in the village center, but it was no longer struck by the careless hands of gossip. It stood as a reminder, not of the harm it had caused, but of the healing it could bring, if only the villagers were willing to listen. The villagers, slowly but surely, began to remember what it was like to care for one another again, to share without judgment, and to support each other in times of need, not just when disaster struck. They had learned a hard lesson, that gossip, like a drum, can be a force for good, or it can destroy everything in its wake. And so the drum, once again, became a symbol of unity, a warning not just for danger, but for the power of words. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe to help the channel grow.